My wife told me my daughter needed a real father, so I moved to New York. Sophie deserves a real father, not someone who plays at being a dad between consulting gigs. My wife Rachel said this at 6:47 p.m. on a Thursday, standing in our kitchen with her arms crossed, while our 7-year-old daughter colored at the dining table 15 feet away, close enough to hear every word. I'd just returned from a 3-day business trip to Chicago. My suitcase still sat by the door. I'd brought Sophie a stuffed penguin from the aquarium. She loved penguins, collected them, had 43 lined up on her bookshelf. But Rachel's words stopped me cold before I could give it to her. "What are you talking about?" My voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. Rachel's expression was cold, calculated. We'd been married for 9 years, together for 12. I'd learned to read her moods, her subtle shifts in temperature. But this wasn't subtle. This was ice. "Marcus has been helping out while you've been gone. He's been here every evening this week. Sophie loves him. He's present, Daniel. He's not constantly traveling, chasing the next contract." Marcus, her colleague from the marketing firm where she worked as creative director. Marcus Chen, the senior VP she'd mentioned maybe 6 times in the past 2 months, always with a specific brightness in her voice I'd ignored. "I travel for work," I said slowly, "to support our family. You know that." "Do I?" She laughed, sharp and bitter. "You're gone half the time. When you're here, you're on your laptop." "Sophie asked me last week if you even lived here anymore." The words hit like a fist to the gut. I looked at Sophie, her dark curls bent over her coloring book, small hands gripping crayons too tightly. She wasn't coloring anymore. She was frozen, listening. "Sophie, I started." "Don't. Rachel cut me off. Marcus is taking us to dinner tonight. You can order takeout. We'll talk about this later." "Marcus is taking what?" "He's been a friend to this family. More than you have lately." She grabbed her purse. "Sophie, honey, come on. Marcus is waiting in the car." Sophie stood slowly, not meeting my eyes. She walked past me, past the suitcase, past the father who'd just traveled 600 miles to get home to her. The door closed at 6:52 p.m. I stood alone in our house, the house I'd worked 70-hour weeks to afford, in the Boston suburb Rachel had insisted on, and felt my entire world shift beneath my feet. Act 1. The betrayal. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. Instead, I opened my laptop. Rachel thought I was constantly chasing contracts. What she didn't know, what I deliberately kept quiet about for reasons that now seemed impossibly naive, was the nature of my consulting work. I was Daniel Morrison, founder and principal consultant of Morrison Analytics, a data analysis and business intelligence firm specializing in corporate fraud detection. My clients included 3 Fortune 500 companies, 2 major law firms, and the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. The travel Rachel resented? I'd been investigating a $47 million embezzlement case in Chicago. The laptop time she dismissed? I'd been building evidence that would send 2 executives to federal prison. I'd kept my success quiet because Rachel had always been sensitive about career competition. When we'd met, she was the rising star, youngest creative director in her firm's history. I'd been a junior data analyst. I'd loved her ambition, her fire, her certainty. Over the years, as my business grew and her career plateaued, I'd learned to downplay my achievements, to call them consulting gigs instead of contracts worth $300,000 each, to describe my work as data stuff instead of forensic financial analysis that makes prosecutors weep with joy. I'd made myself smaller so she could feel bigger. Just like my mother had taught me, happy wife, happy life, Danny. Don't make her feel threatened. But standing in my empty kitchen at 6:58 p.m., I realized something crystallized and cold. I'd been protecting someone who didn't deserve protection. I opened our shared cell phone account, the one in my name, the one I paid for. 3 lines. Mine, Rachel's, Sophie's kitty phone for emergencies. Rachel's call log showed 412 calls to one number in the past 6 weeks. The number belonged to Marcus Chen. Calls ranging from 3 minutes to 97 minutes. Many calls happening at 11 p.m., midnight, 1 a.m. after she'd told me she was going to bed early. Text messages, 1,847 in the same period. I pulled our credit card statements. Marcus's name appeared frequently, dinners charged to Rachel's card. Family dinners, according to the merchants. Italian bistro, steakhouse, upscale sushi restaurant. Then I found something that made my blood run cold. A charge from 2 weeks ago, Clearwater Hotel, room 304. Friday afternoon, 2 p.m. checkout. Rachel had told me she was taking Sophie to a museum that day. I'd been in New York meeting with an FBI agent about the Chicago case. I called the Clearwater. A friendly desk clerk confirmed that room 304 had been booked by Rachel Morrison. Single occupancy in the system, but housekeeping had noted evidence of 2 adult guests. Sophie had been in school that Friday. I'd checked her attendance record online. Perfect attendance all semester. Rachel had told our daughter I wasn't present, while she was in a hotel room at 2 p.m. on a Friday with Marcus Chen. My hands didn't tremble. Something inside me hardened into something sharp and purposeful. I spent the next 4 hours digging. Marcus Chen was 43, divorced 3 years ago, 2 kids who lived with their mother in New Hampshire. His divorce records were public, filed due to irreconcilable differences, but the custody agreement showed his ex-wife had primary custody due to concerns about father's lifestyle and decision-making. His LinkedIn profile showed he'd been at Rachel's firm for 18 months. Before that, he'd been fired from 2 previous agencies. I found the information through a professional network contact who owed me a favor. Both terminations involved inappropriate workplace relationships. Marcus had a pattern. Rachel was just his latest target. I accessed our home security system, cameras I'd installed 2 years ago after a break-in scare. Rachel had forgotten about them. I'd mentioned them once, she'd nodded absently, and they'd faded into the background. The living room camera captured everything from the past month. I watched Marcus arrive at our house the day after I'd left for Chicago, 6:15 p.m. He'd brought wine, Thai food. He'd stayed until 11:47 p.m. The next night, 6:08 p.m. arrival, 12:23 a.m. departure. Wednesday, 5:54 p.m. arrival, 1:14 a.m. departure. I watched them on our couch, my couch, that I'd paid for, sitting too close. His hand on her knee, her laughing at something he said. That specific laugh she used to reserve for me. The camera didn't cover the bedroom. Thank God. I didn't need to see that. But I watched Sophie in several clips, sitting at the dining table doing homework while Marcus and Rachel laughed and whispered in the kitchen. My daughter, pushed to the margins of her own home while a stranger colonized her family. At 11:34 p.m., Rachel texted, having great time with Sophie. Marcus took us to that new burger place. She's so happy. Don't wait up. I looked at the security footage timestamp, 11:34 p.m. Rachel and Marcus were on the couch. Sophie had been asleep since 8:47 p.m. Another lie. I downloaded everything. Every video file, every text, every call log, every credit card statement. I created 3 encrypted backup drives and stored them in 3 separate locations. Then, I did something I'd been avoiding since this nightmare started. I called my brother. Danny? James answered on the second ring, his voice thick with sleep. It was 2:17 a.m. What's wrong? James Morrison was a family law attorney in Manhattan. We'd grown up in Queens, sons of a single mother who'd worked 3 jobs to keep us fed. James had made it to Columbia Law. I'd gone to state school for computer science, built my business from nothing. We were close. We talked every Sunday. But I'd never told him about the growing cracks in my marriage. I need your professional opinion, I said, my voice steady despite everything. Hypothetically. It's 2 a.m. This isn't hypothetical. So I told him. Everything. The silence after I finished lasted 17 seconds. Jesus Christ, Danny. James exhaled, slowly. Okay. First, don't confront her yet. Second, document everything. Sounds like you've started. Third, get Sophie away from this situation as soon as possible. Fourth, you need to hire someone local for the divorce, but I'll consult. And fifth, what? Remember when I offered you that position last year? Running data analysis for my firm's litigation cases? I'd turned it down. It would have meant moving to New York, and Rachel had been adamant that Sophie needed stability, good schools, her Boston life. I remember. Offer still stands. $250,000 base salary plus profit sharing. Manhattan office. You'd start with the Park Avenue office space, full benefits, and we'd help you find an apartment. He paused. Get your daughter out of that house, Danny. Come to New York. Build a case for full custody. And let Rachel explain to a judge why she's been bringing her affair partner around your 7-year-old daughter. Something shifted in my chest. Not quite hope, something harder. Purpose. Send me the contract, I said. Act 2, the discovery. Rachel came home at 10:43 p.m. with Sophie. My daughter went straight to bed without saying goodnight. Rachel poured herself wine, leaned against the kitchen counter. We need to talk about custody arrangements, she said. My heart stopped. What? Marcus and I have been seeing each other. It's serious. He's good with Sophie, and she needs consistency. She sipped her wine, casual as discussing weekend plans. I'm thinking you can have her every other weekend, maybe one weeknight dinner. That way, you can keep traveling for work without disrupting her schedule. Every other weekend. One weeknight dinner. For the daughter I'd raised, coached in soccer, read bedtime stories to every night I was home. You're planning to replace me, I said quietly. Don't be dramatic. I'm planning to give Sophie the stable family life she deserves. Marcus is willing to step up. He wants to be involved. He's your affair partner. She had the audacity to look offended. It's not an affair. You and I have been over for months, Daniel. You've just been too busy with your consulting to notice. We've been over? My voice was dangerously calm. When exactly did you decide that? Does it matter? She set down her wine glass with a sharp click. You're never here. When you are here, you're working. Sophie barely knows you anymore. That's not true, isn't it? When's the last time you took her to school? Helped with homework? Showed up to a parent-teacher conference? 2 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago. Last month. But I didn't say that because I'd learned long ago that arguing with Rachel when she'd rewritten history was pointless. I want a divorce, she continued. Marcus has already agreed to move in. We'll keep the house. It's better for Sophie's stability. You can find an apartment nearby for your weekends with her. Keep the house. The house I'd bought. The mortgage I paid. And you think a judge will give you primary custody after you've been having an affair and lying to our daughter? She laughed. Actually laughed. What affair, Daniel? Marcus and I started dating after our marriage ended. You've been emotionally absent for years. Any judge will see you're married to your work, not your family. Sophie needs her father. Sophie needs a father who's present. Marcus can be that person. The casual certainty in her voice, the absolute conviction that she could erase me and replace me like a broken appliance filled me with cold rage. I see, I said softly. Good. I'll have my lawyer draw up papers. Let's try to keep this civil for Sophie's sake. For Sophie's sake. As if any of this had been for Sophie's sake. Rachel, I said as she turned to leave. One question. She paused. Does Marcus know I'm a forensic financial analyst? That I investigate fraud for a living? Her face flickered, just for a moment. Uncertainty. What does that have to do with anything? Just wondering if he knows the kind of digging I can do when I'm motivated. I smiled. Have a good night. I left her standing in the kitchen and went to pack. Over the next 2 weeks, I became someone I'd never been before. Strategic, methodical, ruthless. James connected me with a pit bull of a divorce attorney named Patricia Alvarez who operated out of Boston but had connections everywhere. Patricia was 57, had never lost a custody case, and smiled like a shark when I showed her my evidence. "This is beautiful," she said, reviewing the security footage. "Absolutely beautiful. Bringing the affair partner around the child, lying about the child's whereabouts, hotel receipts, phone records." She looked up. "Mr. Morrison, you're going to get primary custody, possibly full custody, depending on how she plays this. I want my daughter protected from this situation. Then we'll protect her." Patricia leaned back. "Here's what we're going to do." The plan was elegant. First, I would accept the New York position. Quietly, without telling Rachel. Second, I would find an apartment in Manhattan with space for Sophie, near excellent schools, in a building with security and family amenities. Third, I would document every single interaction with Rachel and Marcus, every lie, every broken promise to Sophie, every moment of parental alienation. Fourth, I would file for divorce and emergency custody in Massachusetts court, presenting evidence of adultery, parental alienation, and creating an unstable environment for a minor child. Fifth, once custody was secured, I would relocate to New York with Sophie under the new custody arrangement. "She's going to fight this," Patricia warned. "I know. She's going to claim you're abandoning your daughter by moving. Let her. I have a paper trail showing I tried to maintain my relationship with Sophie while she systematically cut me out." I pulled out another folder, including texts where she told me not to come to Sophie's school play because Marcus already got tickets and Sophie wants him there instead. Patricia's smile widened. "You're going to be a very good client, Mr. Morrison. I found the perfect apartment in 3 days. Columbus Circle, 2-bedroom, floor-to-ceiling windows with Central Park views. The building had a gym, pool, children's play area, and was 6 blocks from one of Manhattan's best elementary schools. Rent was $8,400 per month. I signed a 2-year lease without blinking. James's firm drew up my employment contract. Start date, 4 weeks from signing. Enough time to handle the divorce filing and initial custody hearings. I enrolled Sophie in PS 158, the elementary school near my new apartment, contingent on custody arrangements. The principal, a kind woman named Dr. Sarah Chen, reviewed Sophie's transcripts and test scores. "She's an excellent student," Dr. Chen said. "We'd be thrilled to have her. Though I notice she's currently in Boston?" "Family situation is in flux," I said carefully. "I'm relocating for work and will be filing for primary custody. My wife has been creating an unstable environment." Dr. Chen's expression shifted. Understanding, sympathy. She'd seen this story before. "Mr. Morrison, I can't make promises about custody outcomes, but I can tell you that this school has an excellent support system for children going through family transitions. If Sophie comes here, she'll be supported. That's all I can ask for." Meanwhile, Rachel was preparing her own case, though she didn't know I was preparing mine. She'd filed first, or tried to. Her attorney, some corporate guy named Mitchell Harris, sent a preliminary demand letter outlining her custody proposal, primary custody to Rachel, supervised visitation for me pending evaluation of work schedule and ability to provide stable environment. Supervised visitation. For the father who'd never missed a birthday, never raised his voice, never done anything but love his daughter with everything he had. Patricia's response was swift and devastating. We filed for divorce the same day Rachel's demand letter arrived, but our filing included something hers didn't: a 47-page evidence packet documenting Rachel's affair, lies, parental alienation, and creation of an unstable environment for Sophie. We included phone records showing 412 calls to Marcus Chen, text message logs with timestamps, security camera footage of Marcus at our house until past midnight on school nights, hotel receipt from the Clearwater, texts from Rachel telling me not to attend Sophie's school events, documentation that Rachel had lied to me about Sophie's whereabouts on multiple occasions, character reference from Sophie's teacher expressing concern about new male figure being introduced rapidly, That last one was courtesy of a conversation I'd had with Mrs. Patterson, Sophie's second-grade teacher, who'd noticed Sophie becoming withdrawn and anxious. Sophie mentioned someone named Marcus picking her up from school. Mrs. Patterson had told me during a parent-teacher conference Rachel hadn't bothered to attend. I was confused because she'd only ever mentioned you and her mother. When I asked Sophie who Marcus was, she said, "Mommy's friend who's here all the time now." She seemed sad about it, Mr. Morrison. Mrs. Patterson's written statement was damning. Patricia filed for emergency temporary custody, arguing that Sophie was in a potentially harmful situation and needed to be removed pending full custody hearing. The judge, a woman named Rebecca Torres who had 3 kids of her own, granted an emergency hearing for 4 days later. Act 3, The Strategic Revenge. The emergency hearing was at 9 a.m. on a Monday in Suffolk County Family Court, Boston. Rachel showed up with Mitchell Harris and Marcus. The fact that she'd brought Marcus to a custody hearing showed how utterly she'd miscalculated the situation. Judge Torres noticed immediately, "Ms. Morrison, who is the individual accompanying you?" Rachel smiled, confident. "This is Marcus Chen, Your Honor. He's been helping with Sophie and has relevant information about the family situation. He's not family, correct?" "Not yet, but he's been a stable presence in Sophie's life while my husband has been traveling constantly." "Mr. Harris," Judge Torres interrupted, her voice sharp. "Control your client." Patricia stood, and I watched her transform into something terrifying and beautiful. "Your Honor, we have extensive documentation showing that Miss Morrison has been conducting an extramarital affair with Mr. Chen and introducing him into the child's life inappropriately. We have security footage, phone records, hotel receipts, and witness testimony. We also have evidence that Miss Morrison has been systematically excluding Mr. Morrison from parenting activities while replacing him with her affair partner." She projected the first security camera image onto the courtroom screen, Rachel and Marcus on our couch, his arm around her, dated 3 weeks ago at 11:47 p.m. Rachel's face went white. "We have 47 hours of similar footage," Patricia continued, showing Mr. Chen in the marital home, often until well past midnight, on nights when the minor child was present. Next image, the hotel receipt from Clearwater Hotel. Miss Morrison told Mr. Morrison she was taking their daughter to a museum that day. The daughter was actually in school. Miss Morrison was at this hotel with Mr. Chen from approximately 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Next, text message screenshots. Miss Morrison repeatedly told Mr. Morrison not to attend Sophie's school events because Marcus already has tickets or Sophie wants Marcus there instead. Mr. Morrison has testimony from Sophie's teacher indicating Sophie never expressed such preferences and actually seemed distressed by Mr. Chen's constant presence. Mitchell Harris was frantically whispering to Rachel, whose composure was crumbling. Judge Torres's expression was ice. "Miss Morrison, is this accurate?" "Your Honor, my marriage was over long before Marcus. Is this accurate? Were you conducting an extramarital affair while still married and living in the marital home? With your child?" Silence. "Yes," Rachel finally whispered. "And did you bring your affair partner around your daughter without your husband's knowledge or consent?" "He was never home. Someone needed to." "Answer the question." "Yes." Judge Torres looked at Marcus, who seemed to be trying to disappear into his chair. "Mr. Chen, do you have children?" "Yes, Your Honor." 2. They live with their mother in New Hampshire. "And how often do you see them?" Marcus shifted uncomfortably. "Every other weekend." "Sometimes." "Sometimes?" "Their mother prefers—" we've had some disagreements about— "I've reviewed your divorce records, Mr. Chen. Your ex-wife was granted primary custody due to concerns about your lifestyle and decision-making." "Would you care to elaborate on what that meant?" Marcus looked like he might be sick. There were misunderstandings about relationships I'd had. Multiple affairs during your marriage? They weren't technically. Mr. Chen, I didn't ask you here to testify, but since Miss Morrison brought you to this hearing, let's be clear. You have a pattern of inappropriate relationships with married women. You have limited custody of your own children due to your ex-wife's concerns about your behavior, and you've been inserted into this child's life as a parental figure without appropriate boundaries or legal standing. Is that accurate? Your Honor, Mitchell Harris tried to intervene, I asked Mr. Chen. Marcus nodded miserably. Yes, Your Honor. Judge Torres turned back to Rachel. Ms. Morrison, did you research this man's background before allowing him extensive access to your daughter? Rachel's silence was answer enough. The judge sighed, made a note. I'm granting temporary primary physical custody to Mr. Morrison, effective immediately. Miss Morrison will have supervised visitation pending a full custody hearing in 30 days. Mr. Chen is not to be present during any visitation period or contact with the minor child. Rachel gasped. You can't. I can, and I have. You created an unstable environment for your daughter by prioritizing your affair over her well-being. You lied to your husband about your daughter's whereabouts to facilitate that affair. You attempted to alienate the child from her father. You brought a man with a questionable history around your daughter without proper vetting. Judge Torres's voice was cold. You demonstrated extraordinarily poor judgment, Miss Morrison. Until the full hearing, your daughter will live with her father. But Daniel's moving to New York. Rachel shouted. He accepted a job there. He's abandoning Sophie. Every eye turned to me. Patricia smiled. Your Honor, Mr. Morrison has indeed accepted a position in New York, a promotion to lead data analyst for Morrison and Associates, a prestigious law firm. The position comes with substantial salary increase and will provide excellent stability for Sophie. Mr. Morrison has already enrolled Sophie in one of Manhattan's top elementary schools and secured a 2-bedroom apartment in a family-friendly building near Central Park. She projected images of my new apartment, the school, the neighborhood. Mr. Morrison's abandonment consists of accepting a significant career opportunity and proactively preparing a stable, enriching environment for his daughter. He has family support in New York, his brother, who is a partner at the firm. He will have a stable work schedule for the first time in years, allowing him to be present for Sophie daily. And most importantly, he'll remove Sophie from the toxic environment Miss Morrison has created. Judge Torres reviewed the documents. Mr. Morrison, when does your new position begin? I stood. 4 weeks from today, Your Honor. I wanted to ensure custody arrangements were settled before relocating Sophie. And your brother is in New York? Yes, Your Honor. James Morrison, family law attorney. He and his wife have offered support with Sophie's transition. They have 3 children close to Sophie's age. The judge made notes, nodded slowly. I see no reason why Mr. Morrison's relocation should prevent him from having primary custody. In fact, given the evidence presented, removing Sophie from her current environment seems advisable. She looked at Rachel. Miss Morrison, you have supervised visitation every other weekend. If you wish to see your daughter more frequently, you're welcome to visit New York. Transportation and accommodation will be at your expense. Rachel was crying now, mascara running down her face. Marcus had his head in his hands. But she's my daughter, Rachel whispered. Then you should have acted like her mother, Judge Torres said flatly. Court is adjourned. I picked Sophie up from school that afternoon with a court order granting me temporary primary custody. The school principal, who'd been notified of the court's decision, escorted Sophie to the office where I waited. Daddy? Sophie looked confused, scared. Am I in trouble? I knelt down, pulled her into a hug. No, baby. You're never in trouble. You're never in trouble. Where's Mommy? Mommy and I are having some grown-up problems. But you're going to come stay with me for a while. We're going to have an adventure. What kind of adventure? I smiled, pulled out a brochure for the Natural History Museum in New York. Remember how much you love penguins? Her eyes lit up. First time in weeks I'd seen that spark. Yeah? New York has an amazing aquarium with a whole penguin exhibit. And there's Central Park with a zoo and playgrounds. And Uncle James has 3 kids you'll get to play with all the time. I took her small hand in mine. We're moving to New York, Sophie. You and me. It's going to be different, but it's going to be good. I promise. Will Mommy come? My heart cracked. Mommy will visit. But right now, you and I are going to have some daddy-daughter time. Is that okay? Sophie thought about this for a long moment. Then, quietly, will Marcus be there? No, baby. Marcus won't be around anymore. The relief on her face was unmistakable. Good. I don't like Marcus. Why not? He's loud. And he talks to Mommy in whispers and they laugh about private stuff. And Mommy pays attention to him instead of me. She looked up at me with those big dark eyes. Are you going to leave again, Daddy? No, I said firmly. I'm done traveling. My new job means I'll be home every night for dinner. I'll take you to school every morning. I'll help with homework. I'll be there, Sophie. I promise. She hugged me tight. Okay. We packed up her room that night. Just clothes and essentials for now. Movers would get the rest. Sophie carefully packed all 43 penguins into a box marked very important in purple crayon. Rachel called 17 times. I didn't answer. At 10:34 p.m., she showed up at the house. I'd changed the locks that afternoon, legally, as I was now the primary custodian and sole name on the mortgage. She pounded on the door. Daniel, let me in. I need to see Sophie. I opened the door but stood in the threshold. She's asleep. And per the court order, your visitation is supervised. You can schedule something through Patricia. You can't keep me from my daughter. I'm not keeping you from her. The court is. Because of your choices. I kept my voice level. Calm. You told me Sophie needed a real father. So I'm being one. I'm removing her from an unstable environment and giving her consistency, stability, and a parent who puts her first. I've always put her first. You brought your affair partner around her. You lied to her about where you were. You tried to replace me with a man who has a pattern of destructive relationships. That's not putting her first, Rachel. That's putting yourself first. Marcus loves her. He wants to be involved. Marcus lost custody of his own kids because of concerns about his behavior. Did you even know that when you started bringing him around Sophie? Her face told me she hadn't. Go home, Rachel. File your motions, make your arguments. But Sophie's with me now. And unless you can prove to a judge that I'm unfit, which you can't, she's staying with me. I closed the door on her tears, her shouting, her threats. Inside, Sophie was sleeping peacefully for the first time in weeks. Act 4. The confrontation. The full custody hearing was 27 days later. In that time, I'd moved Sophie and myself to New York. She'd started at PS 158 and was thriving. Her teacher, Ms. Rodriguez, sent daily updates about how well Sophie was adjusting. She'd made 3 friends. She loved her new school. She was smiling again. Rachel had exercised supervised visitation twice. Both times she'd spent the 2-hour sessions crying and trying to convince Sophie that Daddy stole you from me. Sophie's court-appointed therapist, Dr. Linda Marsh, documented all of this. Her report was devastating for Rachel. Sophie Morrison presents as a well-adjusted, happy child who has responded positively to the stability of living with her father. She expresses anxiety about visits with her mother, specifically around her mother's emotional volatility and attempts to alienate her from her father. Sophie has stated multiple times that she feels safe with Daddy and doesn't want to go back to Mommy's house if Marcus is there. I recommend primary physical custody remain with Father, with Mother receiving therapeutic visitation until she can demonstrate emotional stability and appropriate boundaries. The full hearing was in front of the same Judge Torres. This time, Rachel came alone. Marcus had apparently been fired from the marketing firm after the affair became public knowledge. According to my sources, Patricia had investigated. Marcus's ex-wife had also filed to modify his custody arrangement, seeking to terminate his visitation rights entirely given his continued pattern of instability. Rachel looked haggard. She'd lost weight, wasn't wearing makeup, her clothes were wrinkled. Part of me felt sorry for her. The larger part remembered her standing in our kitchen telling me Sophie needed a real father. Patricia presented our case methodically, evidence of Rachel's affair and inappropriate introduction of Marcus to Sophie. Sophie's teacher reports from both Boston and New York showing marked improvement in behavior and academic engagement after moving to father's custody. Dr. Marsh's psychological evaluation. Documentation of my stable employment, suitable housing, and family support system in New York. Character references from colleagues, neighbors, and Sophie's new school principal. Then came my testimony. Mr. Morrison, Patricia asked, why do you believe you should have primary custody of Sophie? I looked at Rachel, then at the judge. Because I'm her father, not a real father or a part-time father, just her father. I made mistakes. I traveled too much for work, trying to build a career that would provide for my family. But I never stopped loving Sophie. I never put another person before her. And when I saw that her environment had become unstable and harmful, I did what fathers do. I protected her. What do you hope for Sophie's future? I hope she grows up knowing she's loved, that she can count on me, that I'll be there for school plays and homework and skinned knees and heartbreaks. I hope she never again feels like she has to compete for a parent's attention. My voice cracked slightly. I hope she knows she's enough, just as she is. There wasn't a dry eye in the courtroom. Rachel's attorney tried to paint me as an absent workaholic who'd kidnapped Sophie for revenge. But Patricia dismantled every argument with evidence, timesheets showing I'd reduced my work hours significantly, testimony from James about family support, Sophie's own words from therapy sessions. Then, Rachel took the stand. Miss Morrison, her own attorney, asked gently, why do you believe Sophie should return to your primary custody? Because I'm her mother. I carried her for 9 months. I was there for her first steps, her first words. I've been her primary caregiver her whole life. She was crying. Daniel was always working. I did everything. And yes, I made mistakes. I got involved with Marcus when I shouldn't have. But I was lonely. I was overwhelmed. I needed support. And do you believe you can provide a stable environment for Sophie now? Yes. Marcus is out of my life. I've been in therapy. I'm working on myself. I just want my daughter back. Patricia's cross-examination was surgical. Miss Morrison, you stated you were Sophie's primary caregiver. Is that accurate? Yes. Patricia projected a calendar onto the screen. This shows the past 2 years of Sophie's activities, school events, doctor's appointments, extracurriculars. I've marked in blue the events Mr. Morrison attended and in red the events you attended. Can you tell me what you see? The calendar was overwhelmingly blue. Rachel stared at it, stunned. Daniel told me he couldn't make those. Actually, we have text messages where you told Mr. Morrison not to attend because you'd already made arrangements or Sophie wanted just you there. Would you like to see them? I don't remember. Let me refresh your memory. Patricia showed text after text, Rachel telling me not to come to parent-teacher conferences, Sophie's soccer games, school plays, birthday parties. Miss Morrison, you weren't the primary caregiver. You were the primary gatekeeper, deliberately excluding Mr. Morrison from parenting duties while simultaneously claiming he was absent. Isn't that correct? No. And when Mr. Morrison was traveling for work, what was he doing? Consulting, I guess. He was investigating corporate fraud, Miss Morrison, working with the FBI, major law firms, Fortune 500 companies, making substantial income that supported your family, including the home you currently live in, the car you drive, the credit cards you use. Correct? Rachel nodded miserably. So let me get this straight. Mr. Morrison worked to provide for his family while you controlled his access to his daughter. Then you used his work travel as justification for bringing your affair partner around that daughter. Then you claimed Mr. Morrison wasn't a real father and tried to replace him. Is that an accurate summary? It's not that simple. It seems quite simple to me. Patricia turned to Judge Torres. Your Honor, Rachel Morrison created a narrative where she was the victim of an absent husband to justify her affair and parental alienation. When Mr. Morrison discovered the truth rather than accepting accountability, she escalated by attempting to secure primary custody and exclude him further. Only when confronted with evidence did she begin to accept reality. Even now, her testimony shows more concern for her own needs than Sophie's well-being. Judge Torres reviewed her notes for what felt like an eternity. Finally, I'm granting primary physical custody to Daniel Morrison. Miss Morrison will have supervised visitation twice monthly until Sophie's therapist determines unsupervised visitation is appropriate. All visitation will occur in New York at Miss Morrison's expense. Mr. Morrison will have final say on all major decisions regarding Sophie's education, healthcare, and welfare. Rachel sobbed. Please, please don't take her from me. You did this to yourself, Miss Morrison, the judge said, not unkindly. The good news is that children are resilient and forgiving. If you do the work, real therapeutic work, not performative, you may rebuild your relationship with your daughter. But that's entirely up to you. The gavel came down. I'd won. Act 5. Resolution and Reflection. 6 months later, I stood in our apartment on a Saturday morning watching Sophie practice her piano lesson at the keyboard we'd bought last month. She was thriving. Her report card had been outstanding. She joined the school choir and made the soccer team. She had sleepovers with friends and playdates in Central Park. Every morning, I walked her to school. Every afternoon, I was home when she got back. Every night, we had dinner together. Sometimes just us. Sometimes with James and his family. Sometimes with Sarah, the woman I'd been casually dating for 2 months, a colleague of James's wife, a pediatric nurse who was patient and kind and made Sophie laugh. Rachel visited once a month now, unsupervised, as Dr. Marsh had approved after 6 months of consistent therapy and appropriate behavior. The visits were still awkward, but Sophie was learning to navigate them. Rachel had stopped trying to alienate her from me and started focusing on rebuilding their relationship. It would take time, maybe years, maybe forever would carry scars. But Sophie was happy. That was what mattered. My phone buzzed. A text from James? Dinner tonight? Kids want to see Sophie. Also, partners meeting went well. Your work on the Patterson case was brilliant. I smiled, typed back, dinner sounds great. And thanks. Feels good to be using my skills somewhere I'm appreciated. The Patterson case had been a $23 million fraud investigation that I'd cracked in 6 weeks. The firm had offered me a partnership track. I'd accepted. Another text, this one from Patricia, saw the final court report. Full custody maintained, Rachel's unsupervised visitation approved. You did good, Morrison. Sophie's lucky to have you. I'm lucky to have her, I replied. Because it was true. Sophie had saved me as much as I'd saved her. She'd given me purpose, direction, a reason to fight when everything seemed lost. Daddy? Sophie looked up from her piano. Can we go see the penguins today? Absolutely. Let me just finish this email. Is it work? Yeah, baby. Are you going to have to travel? She asked this sometimes, anxiety creeping into her voice. I always gave the same answer. Nope. I'm done traveling. I'm right here, and I'm not going anywhere. She smiled, that full, genuine smile that had been missing for months before the move, and went back to her piano practice. I thought about Rachel sometimes, about the woman I'd married, the family we'd tried to build, the ways we'd both failed each other. But I didn't regret the divorce. I didn't regret the fight for custody. I didn't regret moving to New York. Because the thing about betrayal is that it reveals the truth. Rachel had told me Sophie needed a real father. She'd meant it as an insult, a justification for replacing me. Instead, it became a challenge I rose to meet. I became the real father Sophie deserved. Present, engaged, protective, unwavering. Rachel had underestimated me because I'd spent years making myself smaller for her comfort. She'd assumed I'd accept her narrative, roll over, fade away. She'd been wrong. The best revenge, I'd learned, wasn't destruction. It was reconstruction. Taking the broken pieces of your life and building something better, stronger, more authentic. Marcus had been fired. His visitation with his own children terminated. Last I heard, he was working retail in New Hampshire and living with his brother. Rachel had lost her position at the marketing firm, not officially because of the affair, but because the scandal had made it impossible for her to work with clients or colleagues. She'd taken a lower-level position at a startup, was rebuilding her career from scratch. I felt no satisfaction in their suffering. Just neutrality. They'd made choices. Those choices had consequences. I'd protected my daughter from those consequences. That was enough. 1 year after the divorce was finalized, Sophie and I were walking through Central Park on a Sunday afternoon. It was October, the leaves turning gold and crimson, the air crisp with autumn promise. "Daddy," Sophie said, "can I ask you something?" "Always." "Why did you and Mommy get divorced?" We'd had versions of this conversation before, but she was getting older now, 9 years old, more perceptive, ready for more truth. I chose my words carefully. Mommy and I wanted different things, and Mommy made some choices that hurt our family. I had to decide whether to accept those choices or to protect you from them. I chose to protect you. Because you love me? Because I love you more than anything in the world. She thought about this. "Do you hate Mommy?" "No, baby. I don't hate her. I'm sad about how things turned out. But I don't hate her. She's still your mom, and she loves you. She lost her way for a while. Will she find her way back? I hope so, for your sake." Sophie squeezed my hand. "I'm glad we moved here, Daddy. I like our life." "Me too, sweetheart. Me too." 2 years after everything fell apart, I stood in our apartment, no longer new, now thoroughly ours, filled with Sophie's artwork and my books and the accumulated debris of a life fully lived, and realized I was genuinely, completely happy. Sophie was 10 now, confident and bright and kind. She played piano beautifully, excelled at soccer, had more friends than I could keep track of. Sarah and I had gotten serious. She'd been patient with my baggage, wonderful with Sophie, integrated seamlessly into our lives. We were talking about moving in together next year. My career had exploded. I'd made partner at James's firm, was handling increasingly high-profile cases, had turned down 3 competing offers from other firms. Rachel had gotten her life together. She'd completed 2 years of therapy, rebuilt her relationship with Sophie through consistent, appropriate visits. She'd apologized genuinely, without excuses, for what she'd done. I'd accepted her apology, not for her sake, but for Sophie's. Our co-parenting relationship would never be warm, but it was functional, civil, focused on Sophie's needs. She'd never remarried. I didn't ask if there was anyone new in her life. It wasn't my business anymore. The narrative of my life had rewritten itself. The story that began with betrayal had transformed into something richer, a testament to resilience, love, and the fierce protectiveness of a father who refused to be erased. I'd lost a wife. But I'd gained myself, the truest, strongest version I'd ever been. And I'd kept my daughter. That trade? Worth every painful step. Epilogue. 5 years after the divorce, Sophie was 13 years old and navigating middle school with the same confidence she approached everything else. Rachel had moved to New York, not to our neighborhood, but to Brooklyn. She'd taken a job at a nonprofit, was dating someone appropriate, saw Sophie weekly for lunch or dinner. They'd rebuilt something, not the relationship they'd had before, but something honest and real. I was grateful for that. Not for Rachel's sake, but for Sophie's. A child deserves to love both parents without guilt. Sarah and I had married 2 years ago. Sophie had been our flower girl, wearing a purple dress she'd picked out herself, beaming as she walked down the aisle, scattering rose petals. We'd had a son last year, Thomas, who Sophie adored with fierce, protective love. She was an extraordinary big sister. James and I had expanded the firm. Morrison & Morrison now employed 47 people across 3 offices. I still did forensic analysis, still investigated fraud, still helped bring criminals to justice. But I never traveled. I never missed dinner. I never missed a school play or soccer game or parent-teacher conference. I'd learned what mattered. One evening, Sophie found me in my home office reviewing case files. Dad? She only called me Dad now, having outgrown Daddy around age 11. Can I ask you something? Always. Do you ever regret what happened with you and Mom? I thought about this carefully. Sophie was old enough now for complete honesty. I regret the pain you went through. I regret that your mother and I couldn't make our marriage work. But I don't regret fighting for you. I don't regret moving to New York. I don't regret building the life we have now. I looked at her, this incredible young woman she was becoming. Sometimes hard things happen for reasons we don't understand at the time. But looking at you now, seeing the person you're becoming, having the family we've built, no, I don't regret it. She hugged me, fierce and quick. I'm glad you fought for me, Dad. I'll always fight for you, Sophie. Always. She pulled back, grinned. Even when I'm being a nightmare teenager, especially then. She laughed, went back to her room to finish homework. I sat in my office, listening to the sounds of my home, Sarah singing to Thomas in the nursery, Sophie's music playing softly through her bedroom door, the ordinary, beautiful chaos of a family. Rachel had told me Sophie needed a real father. She'd been right. Sophie had needed someone present, engaged, protective, unwavering, someone who would put her first, always. She'd needed exactly the father I'd become. And I'd needed her, the daughter who'd saved me by giving me a reason to fight, to change, to become better. We'd rescued each other. And that, more than any revenge, was the sweetest victory of all. The end.